Okay, so we've talked about the pelvic half, the top, the bottom, and the sacrum. Now we're going to look at one particular point on the pelvic half, that is the sit bones, the things we sit on. So find yourself sitting on something flat, ideally like a stool, and generally I like it to be firmer, no padding because it's easier to feel the actual contact of the bones. And I want you to just start rocking your pelvis and go ahead and bring your awareness to the sensation of these 2 points, left and right, and how they can move on the chair or stool. I invite you to move them in all different ways, so I can slide one forward and back, I can rock them up and down, I can tip them both forward and back, I can lift one and move it in a bit of a circle, I can lift the other, move it in a bit of a circle, I can reverse those circles. Right, so there's lots of different ways these bones can move. I encourage you to start small. Don't necessarily push your pelvis everywhere. Like I've said before, we have a tendency to actually lock the intrinsic muscles when we do that, and we'll kind of be yanking the pelvis with other muscles like the abs. But really what I'm looking for is movement within the joints of the pelvis itself, not to move the pelvis as a whole block. So the sit bones are the bottom of the pelvic half, right? If I get my single pelvic half model, we've seen that it's sort of a propeller shape, and we've seen that there's a top half and then there's a bottom half with joints and things. And now we're going to look at the bottom most corner here. And I actually like the image of a tuber, and I thought of that because this is called the ischial tuberosity, and it's kind of like a tuber to me, this bottom shape. It feels very round like the base of a russet potato, and it was like I was just looking at a sliver of that russet potato, and it was sort of rocking or growing right down into the earth. So I can use that image as a way to gain a much deeper and different sort of three-dimensional sense of what my sit bone is and where my sit bone is. So instead of thinking I'm on my sit bones, right? Think about, well, where on my sit bones am I? And I can rock back and I can rock forward, and this will begin to bring up questions of what is your ideal or most efficient posture when you're sitting, beginning to explore this relationship of the sit bones. So what feels good, what feels hard, what movements can you access, what movements can't you access, right? These are all questions. I'm going to try to roll onto the outside of my sit bone, and when I do that, I can feel the much more sort of gentle slope of the very bottom of the sit bone, and then when I get to the side, there's a part that really changes its rate of change, right? Its angle much more steeply than it had been on the bottom. And you can see that in the model, that we have this sort of rocking bottom and then it hooks up. So I can actually feel that hook up as I lean out to the edge of my sit bone. The other thing I can feel is this triangle sort of arch that's going to be surrounding the genitals in both male and female bodied people. And what I can do is I can roll my whole pelvis forward. So not just bending at the low back, but actually rolling the pelvis forward. I can put my hands back on the arches of the pelvic halves. And I can feel that they roll forward, and then I can feel the front portion of my sit bones, and I can begin to feel that outer sort of triangle shape of the sit bones. And then of course I can feel my genitals pressing into the stool, right? So this is an area that we don't think or talk about a lot, and it's not an area that we're often allowed to touch. So here I am giving you permission to start touching, even with your hands, and feeling and getting a different relationship to this bottom part of your pelvis. Okay. If you enjoyed this video, sign up for the InBody Space newsletter and share the link with a friend. You can also find original content on Facebook and Instagram.